PS Plus Premium is bringing your PS5 new features. Did Spider-Man 2 and the PS5 Slim just leak? And one of my favorite SSDs of all time is on sale now for its lowest price yet. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. This is the midweek news update, and we got some awesome news between the early week news update and this one, so in the past couple days. First off, though, I'm going to give you a PSA about my all-time favorite SSD, the Samsung 980 Pro. I know I see the comments. People were like, hey, you didn't bring up the 980 Pro with heatsink in a while. Now you brought it up in the last week's video. Everything is right in the world. That is correct, because this is my favorite SSD for the PS5, and it's on sale now. So over at Best Buy, it looks like they lowered the normal price of it down to $189, which is still a really good deal. I think before it was selling for like $250 or $260, which is crazy, but now it's all the way down to $190. That's for the 2 terabyte option, and I have noticed all the people saying that they really want a 1 terabyte option because they're so much cheaper, and now is definitely the time to buy them because it's on sale for $99. So this is an absolutely awesome deal on what I think is the best SSD you can get for your PS5. And if you put this in your PS5, you'll have 1.8 terabytes of storage, which is enough for like Warzone and maybe 2 other games. No, I'm just kidding. That's enough for Warzone and a couple other games, at least. So yeah, I will have that linked down in the description. I would really appreciate it if you used my link because I get a little bit of a kickback, and that's my Resident Evil 4 fund. I'm so excited to play this tomorrow night, or tonight by the time you see this video. Next up, let's talk about the whole Activision, PlayStation, Microsoft deal thing that's been happening over the past few months, because things are really heating up now. We know this is supposed to resolve around June of this year. It looks like all of the parties involved just want this over with and done, and because of that, we're getting some major concessions from Microsoft and Sony. So the first concession I want to talk about is that Microsoft said that if they get Call of Duty, if they get Activision, when Call of Duty comes out on PlayStation in the future, it will be better on PlayStation than it is on Xbox. And the reasoning for that is that over on PlayStation, we have the DualSense. We have all the awesome features like haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, the worst battery life in the game, and Microsoft wants to make sure they're going to continue to support that going on into the future, which is great because with Call of Duty, Black Ops Cold War and then Modern Warfare 2, both of those games supported the DualSense's adaptive triggers and haptics really well. Even if you were on PC like I was for most of the time I played Modern Warfare 2, I still got to take advantage of a lot of those DualSense features. So I think it was a legitimate fear for people that if Microsoft was able to pick up Activision and Call of Duty, they would stop implementing those awesome features that the DualSense has. Because if you look at the PS5, the DualSense's features are like some of the best, most next-gen feeling features of the entire console. So I think personally, that's a legitimate fear. Now, the other concession I've seen going around the internet is that in this document that was released, there was a redacted section that mentioned the PSVR 2, and a lot of people that are like verified leakers or people who have been following this pretty closely are saying that basically PlayStation is asking Microsoft to agree to put the PSVR 2 on the Xbox Series X so that you can take advantage of the headset there and ideally sell more games than they are on the PS5 already. And honestly, that's pretty smart. I don't really have an issue with it because it's not like people are lining up to buy a PS5 for the explicit reason that they'll be able to get a PSVR 2 headset on there. I think it's a supplementary accessory for people who already own a PS5, and I don't think the PS5 really needs a lot of help from the PSVR 2 because it's selling extremely well. We hear about it all the time. So yeah, it would be cool to see the PSVR 2 be able to be used on the Xbox Series X. I'm looking over there because my Xbox and my PS5 are right next to each other, but I would also hope that is a sign that maybe we'll get to see the PSVR 2 work on PC, because that's where I think it has the most utility, right? Like the Quest 2 is good, the PSVR 2 is like phenomenal, and I don't think I could go back to the Quest 2 after using my PSVR 2. And the fact that it's a single cable solution, you've got the headphones baked right into the headset, you've got the best cool blocking technology that makes it so no light leaks in, you've got great screens, you've got better inside out tracking. All of that stuff would be great on PC for games that aren't available on the PS5, like Half-Life Alyx or Boneworks, which are 2 of my all-time favorite VR games. I mean, Resident Evil Village, I think now is my favorite VR game after playing so much of that on the PSVR 2, but my other 2 favorite games are Half-Life Alyx and Boneworks. So it'd be awesome to see this thing come to PC before the Xbox Series X, because personally, I have a PS5. I don't really care about playing VR games on my Xbox Series X, but it is a cool concession, and I think that's good for PSVR 2 users because the more games they sell for the headset, the more support it's going to get. Huge shout out to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. It's 2023, which means it's time to get a VPN. Basically, what Surfshark VPN does is keep your online identity safe by encrypting all of the data that travels between you and the internet. My favorite benefit of a VPN though is it stops your ISP from throttling you. When I'm streaming stuff and also playing games, I get throttled all the time at my house, and I just flip on my VPN and everything is fixed. Surfshark also has a clean web feature which blocks ads, malware, and phishing attempts which allow you to surf the web safely. It also protects you against DDoS attacks because the hacker can only figure out the server IP, which keeps you nice and safe. The three key points with Surfshark VPN are alert, antivirus, and search. It monitors your personal data and gives you real-time alerts. It stops you from getting malicious software added to your computer, and it keeps you blocked from search engines so people can't find all of your data if they're looking for it to use it for bad reasons. So if you want to try Surfshark VPN, and you definitely should, click the link down in the description and use the code PSReady at checkout to get 83% off. You'll also get 3 extra months for free, and they also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. That means there's no risk in trying it out. So thanks again to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. After playing the Diablo 4 beta this weekend, I am excited that this game, there's like zero chance of it becoming an Xbox exclusive in the future, because obviously it's coming out on June 6th. Even if this whole regulatory thing wraps up, we're not going to see Microsoft suddenly cancel the PS5 version of Diablo 4, because that would be crazy, and it's just not something I think even they would do. And Diablo comes out like once in a blue moon, probably, honestly, like a decade it's been since Diablo 3, which is crazy and kind of scary, because I remember lining up with my friends in the summer that it came out, between I think freshman and sophomore year in college, and I played that game all summer on my crappy MacBook, and it was great. But yeah, now Diablo 4 is coming out an entire decade later, and yeah, there's not going to be Diablo 5 for probably the same amount of time, so we won't have to worry about exclusive Diablo games on Xbox until Diablo 5, which is great. But one thing that really sucks is that it looks like we are missing out on a game that was being ported to the PlayStation 5 until Microsoft bought the studio, which is of course Redfall. So we could kind of assume this, right? Like Redfall, there's no way it was made in the short time period between Microsoft picking up Bethesda and then making all of their games exclusive, right? Like it's a few years at this point, but nothing that's long enough to develop an entire game. So by that logic, it's fair to assume that Redfall was in development for a little while, at least for PlayStation 5, before Microsoft picked it up and then made it an exclusive for Xbox Series XS and PC. And then when Xbox bought Bethesda and then in turn Arcane Studios, they said, let's wrap up development on that Redfall PS5 port and make this an Xbox exclusive, which, you know, I get. Sony's done similar things in the past, I guess, and Sony does also pay for third-party exclusives, which is hard to defend against in this scenario. It's like that's the game they're playing. I personally don't have a huge issue with Microsoft doing this with Redfall. The only reason I think it sucks is that I actually got to go play Redfall with Ray a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was pretty good. Like when this game was announced, I'm like an OG Redfall fan, right? Like when this was announced at the Xbox E3 showcase they announced it at, I was super excited for it because it's a game set around Halloween. It's set in Massachusetts, which is a place I usually travel to around Halloween. It has vampires, it has guns, it's a looter shooter. It's basically like everything I like about video games all wrapped up into one, and it doesn't have a battle pass or microtransactions. But, you know, we didn't hear about it for a while, and then as time went on, it started looking less and less cool, I guess. It's mean to say cool, but like we saw the vampire designs, I still don't really like them. But now that I've played it, I'm back on the hype train for Redfall. We've seen the developers kind of compare it to Far Cry in the past, and I think that is definitely an apt description for this game. It's less like Borderlands and more like Far Cry. And overall, it was a really cool, creepy shooter that felt like an arcane game, but it had real guns, like cool AKs, shotguns, like all the stuff I like using in Resident Evil versus the stuff you can mess around with in Deathloop. So yeah, I am pretty bummed that it's not coming to PlayStation, because I think PlayStation fans would really enjoy this game. But I'm just going to say, maybe pick it up on PC, because it is pretty cool. So you guys know at this point that I'm basically the biggest PS Plus Premium hater. Like, it's not because I don't like it, it's just because I want it to be better for how much it costs, right? Like Sony promised us emulation of PS1, PS2, and PSP games, and then they barely release any as time has gone on. I would really like to see them include PS PS3 emulation natively on the PS5, just knowing how powerful that console is. But it looks like finally things are moving in the right direction, at least like a step, like a half step in the right direction. And I thought it was worth talking about because there's new features in a lot of the games they're releasing. So as far as PSP goes, we got 2 games this month, Ape Academy 2 and Siphon Filter Dark Mirror, both of which are pretty decent games. I've never personally played Ape Academy 2, but I know a lot of people who enjoy it. I'm a big fan of the Siphon Filter games, however. They're made by Ben Studio, who did stuff like Resistance Retribution, Uncharted Golden Abyss, and Days Gone, one of my favorite and most underrated PlayStation studios. And if you try these games out on your PlayStation 5, which if you bought them before like I have, you'll already have them, which is cool, you'll get new features. So you'll get the standard features, which are improved visuals, quick saving, new video filters, and the ability to rewind, which is great in something like Siphon Filter because it's a stealth game. It's kind of like more actiony Metal Gear where you can kill people. It's, I guess, like Splinter Cell, so having the ability to rewind in a game like that is awesome, especially if you're playing it in stealth mode. I would really like to see something like that in the original Metal Gear Solid, because there are times in that game where you get seen and it just sucks because you have to go way far back and start at a checkpoint that's like not where you want to be. So yeah, it'd be cool to see a rewind feature for that. But you also get trophy support with these games, which is really cool. I know being a trophy hunter is sort of like a dwindling fandom in the world of PlayStation, but I still like getting trophies. I like going for the platinum if it is doable. I'm considering doing it in Dead Space Remake after I play Resident Evil 4 Remake, and honestly, I was considering it in Resident Evil 4 Remake until I saw how difficult it is. It is not anything to laugh at how hard the platinum trophy is going to be in Resident Evil 4 Remake. But yeah, you know, I'm excited that these games are getting trophies over on the emulation side as well. This makes sense to me because late in the PSP's life cycle, it actually did get an update where you were allowed to log into the PlayStation Network, and people just kind of assumed that that meant trophy support was coming to the PSP at some point. And Colin on the Sacred Symbols podcast has said multiple times that he heard from Sony that they were planning on including trophies on the PSP, but they found out people were able to like change them too easily and they're able to inflate their trophy score, and Sony actually cared about trophies at that point. So they were like, nope, we're never going to release them on there. But having it on Vita was always awesome. I got most of my platinums that I have right now in Vita games. Even Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, I did most of the multiplayer streaming to my Vita from my PS4 so my friends could all watch TV, because I had to grind through the multiplayer to get that trophy and it really sucked. So yeah, it is cool to see trophies coming to these games. I am more of a fan of the rewind feature, the improved visuals. I know that the emulator they're using for some games doesn't really work all that well, but they have gone back and improved some of the worst running PS1 games. So overall, I don't know if PS Plus Premium is worth upgrading to just yet, but if Sony keeps doing what they're doing or have been doing lately, I think we're approaching the point of where it'll be worth it. All I'm saying though is if you get PS3 native emulation working on my PS5, you will have a day one or day whatever subscriber from me right there. I need PS3 emulation on my PS5. I miss those games. And the last news story I have for you guys today ties into the PS5 Slim and Spider-Man 2. So the first part of this is that we now know when Spider-Man 2 is coming out, thanks to Tony Todd. He's gotten in trouble for stuff like this in the past because if you guys don't know, Tony Todd, who's voicing Venom, is Candyman from the Candyman movies. But now Sony's mad at him about Spider-Man because, again, he's playing Venom. And he said that the marketing is really going to spin up in August and that it's looking like September is when the game is going to come out. I'm so thankful for this because that's what we kind of thought. We all just assumed it would be out in September because that's when the first Spider-Man game came out. But I'd say that this is like confirmation that's pretty ironclad. But the second layer is that Tom Henderson said that the PS5 Slim is probably coming out around the same time, which is great because that means it'll launch most likely with a Spider-Man bundle. And I'm hoping, praying, crossing my fingers that we get a special edition PlayStation 5 that's Spider-Man themed, because the PS4 Pro, the red one with the white Spider-Man logo that came out around the same time as the first Spider-Man game, that thing still sells for over retail because people wanted it so bad. So if you can imagine them releasing a Spider-Man 2 PS5, the most sought after console ever, and it's Spider-Man 2 themed, people are going to be lining up down the block to get their hands on that, and the sales numbers for PS5 are going to go through the roof. The other interesting layer here though is that it's launching around the same time as Starfield, because because as we've heard, Starfield's probably coming out around September, and that's going to be pretty tough for Microsoft. Now, I just talked about how Redfall is really fun, but technically it was like a little bit messy. That's a game where I don't think they can afford it to be technically messy, because whether Redfall deserves it or not, it has become one of the biggest Xbox exclusives of this year, and people are going to be scrutinizing everything about it. The same goes for Starfield, right? Like, they're delaying this game over and over again because they know it needs to be big, it needs to run well, it needs to not have the classic Bethesda problems, and it needs to be not that glitchy. So it's already fighting an uphill battle, especially with the reputation hit Bethesda's taken after Fallout 76, Wolfenstein Youngblood, to some extent Rage 2. You know, they haven't released some great stuff over the past few years outside of, I would say, Ghostwire Tokyo, Deathloop, and of course Hi-Fi Rush, but still, they've got an uphill battle here, and going up against Spider-Man is not like the smartest move in my opinion. And honestly, I think we could see Starfield delayed again, just because I don't think they want to go up against Sony making a sequel to, I think, its best-selling game, if not one of like the top 3 best-selling games ever for them, and also going up against Spider-Man, which is like the most popular superhero franchise of them all. And also, Sony doesn't really ever release games around November. I mean, God of War 2 came out in November, but it was a really like a standout game to have release around then. It's usually wide open with Sony releases. Bethesda obviously released Skyrim in November 11/11/11, so they could kind of do that again this year with 11/11/23 with Starfield. You know what I'm saying? There's some cool reasoning for them to delay till November and not go up against Spider-Man. But yeah, looks like we're getting Spider-Man 2 and the PS5 Slim, which means a Spider-Man bundle at the very least, and hopefully a special edition Spider-Man 2 PS5, because if they release that, I will be going in. I will be upgrading my PS5 to a Spider-Man 2 edition, because man, I love Spider-Man.